Hello, today I'm going to be making a Curuba vinegar. First, you have to make sure that the jar is sterilized. So first, we're going to be mixing the water with the sugar. It's 70% of the weight of the water in sugar because the Curuba is very sour. Then you add the Curuba and you wait until everything is melted. When the sugar is dissolved, you transfer it to the jar. To close it, you have to put water in a Ziploc bag, then put it in the jar to make sure that it doesn't directly touch the air. Then you put a piece of fabric and you close it. Then you have to put it in a dark environment for 2 to 3 weeks. And you have to make sure to label it with the name of the product, the date when you made it, and your name. When the fermentation process is done, you take out the bag, you pour the fermentation into the strainer, you strain it, and then you make sure to put it in the fridge for as long as you need until you use it.
But what's Curuba? Curuba is a fruit called Passiflora tarminiana. It's usually cultivated in South American countries like Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, Peru, and Bolivia. Um, Usually, it's used in juices or sorbetes um, because it's a very sour fruit, so it can be very strong. So it's using with a lot of sugar and usually with milk. For the fermentation process of the vinegar, you need to take into account that this process is composed of two fermentations. The first one is the alcoholic fermentation. For this, you have to add sugar so the wild yeast can feed off this sugar and create the alcohol. That's why it's important if the fruit is very sour, it doesn't have a very high sugar content, you have to add it so the wild yeast can feed off this sugar and create the alcohol. This alcohol is very important for the second fermentation, that is the acidic fermentation. For this one, you take the alcohol and expose it to oxygen so this bacteria called acidobacter can feed off this alcohol and transform it into vinegar. This process takes from 20 to 40 days and it grows between 6 and 12% of alcohol. That's why it's so important to add the sugar, but you have to be careful because if you add way too much sugar, this second fermentation won't work and you won't have the acid that we call vinegar because this acidobacter doesn't grow over 12% of alcohol. For this process, you have to take three important things into account. The first one is the time. You have to make sure that you put the vinegar on fermentation for enough time so these two fermentation processes can happen. The second one is the temperature. If the temperature is too low, the fermentation won't work, and if the temperature is too high, instead of fermenting it, it will go bad and start growing bacteria that we don't want to grow. And the third one is the sugar content. As I was saying, if it has a very high content of sugar, this second acidic fermentation won't work because the alcohol will be more than 12%. And if the content of sugar is too low, then this alcohol content will be less than 6%, and then this second bacteria won't grow either. Lastly, it's very important to talk about the uses that we're gonna give this vinegar. As any other vinegar, that can be made of other fruits or wine vinegar or balsamic vinegar. It can be used for salads, like for the dressing. It can be used as the acidic part of the dressing, and it can also be used in sauces, like a mayonnaise. Instead of putting lemon, you can put this vinegar. Thank you for your time. Now I leave the references.